On Christmas Eve, the city glowed with decorations and laughter, but Claire, a millionaire single mother, walked out of her tall office building feeling nothing but tiredness pressing down on her shoulders, her high heels clicking against the frozen pavement as she pulled her coat tightly around her. She had just finished a long meeting that had drained her completely, and while others hurried home to family dinners or last-minute shopping, she felt an emptiness inside her chest, a silence that no amount of money seemed able to fill. Her son Daniel was waiting at home with the nanny, but even her love for him did not erase the loneliness that followed her like a shadow. The streets were alive with the smell of roasted chestnuts and the sound of carols drifting from nearby shops, yet all she wanted was to get into her car, drive home, and bury herself in her thoughts. As she crossed a quiet corner, her eyes were caught by something unusual. A small figure crouched near a trash bin in the alley. At first, she thought it was a stray animal, but then she realized it was a child, no older than 9 or 10, with messy hair, thin arms, and a torn coat far too light for the biting cold. Claire froze, unsure if her eyes were deceiving her, but when the girl pulled out an old piece of bread from the trash and began eating it hungrily, Claire felt her chest tighten with shock and disbelief. For a moment, she told herself it was none of her business, that someone else would help, that the city had shelters for children like her, but her feet refused to move forward. Something about the girl's desperate hands and hollow eyes chained her to the spot. The girl noticed Claire watching and immediately froze, clutching the bread to her chest as if afraid it might be taken away, her eyes wide with fear. Claire took a cautious step closer, her breath clouding in the cold night, and she tried to smile, though her heart was racing. "Are you all right?" she asked gently, her voice carrying both warmth and uncertainty. The girl did not answer, only shook her head quickly, ready to dart away like a cornered bird. Claire realized she looked terrified of strangers, perhaps used to being ignored or worse. Something inside Claire broke at that moment, the weight of her wealth, her privilege, her comfortable life, clashing with the sight of a child digging through garbage to survive. She wanted to help but did not know how. She wanted to reach out, yet feared scaring her away. The world around them continued to sparkle with Christmas joy. But in that small alley, the truth of loneliness and survival cut through the lights. Like a sharp blade, Claire felt her breath catch as she wondered who this girl was, why she was alone on such a night, and what kind of story could have led her to this place. For the first time in years, Claire felt something awaken inside her, not the thrill of business success or the pride of luxury, but a raw, urgent compassion that whispered that this meeting was no accident, that this cold night was about to change everything. Claire stood frozen in the alley, her breath mixing with the icy air, her eyes locked on the frail little girl who clutched the stale piece of bread as if it were treasure, and for a long moment, neither of them moved, both caught between fear and curiosity, until Claire forced herself to kneel slightly so her presence would feel less threatening and whispered softly that she meant no harm. But the girl's shoulders trembled as if she expected punishment for being seen, and Claire realized this child had likely lived many nights on the edges of society, where kindness was rare and trust was dangerous. The silence stretched painfully, broken only by the distant sound of carolers and the crunch of snow, beneath hurried footsteps of passersby who did not notice what was happening in the shadows. And Claire felt the weight of her choices pressing down on her. She could walk away, return to her comfortable home, tell herself it was not her responsibility, or she could step into a story that might unravel everything she thought she knew about her life. Slowly, she removed her leather gloves and reached into her coat pocket, pulling out a small wrapped chocolate bar she had taken from her office earlier, holding it out with a trembling hand as a peace offering, and she said quietly that no child should eat from the trash on Christmas Eve, her voice breaking against the cold. The girl's wide eyes darted between the chocolate and Claire's face, her hunger warring with her fear, and after what felt like an eternity she inched forward, grabbed the chocolate, and retreated quickly like a cornered animal, ripping the wrapper open with shaking fingers and devouring it as though it were the most precious thing she had ever tasted. Claire felt her throat tighten at the sight, and she asked gently for her name, but the girl only shook her head, crumbs on her lips, eyes still watchful, as if names were secrets too costly to give. Claire sighed, realizing trust would not be won in an instant, and she wrapped her coat tighter as a gust of wind cut through the alley. But she could not bring herself to leave the child alone. She thought of Daniel, safe and warm at home, waiting for his mother, and her heart ached at the unfairness of it all. The cruel contrast between her son's comfort and this girl's suffering. She tried again, speaking softly about how cold it was, how dangerous the night could be, and she offered to take the girl somewhere safe. But the child stiffened, clutching the empty wrapper as if it were a shield, and Claire realized that this was not simply a matter of hunger or shelter. This girl carried stories in her silence. Stories of abandonment, of betrayal, perhaps of running from something too painful to face. Claire's mind raced with questions. Was she an orphan? Had she run away? Was there someone searching for her? But none of them could be asked without scaring her further. So she chose instead to sit quietly on the cold ground across from her, showing with her presence that she would not force her, would not harm her, that she was willing to wait. Minutes passed, the city noises rising and falling around them like waves. And finally, the girl whispered something so faint that Claire almost missed it. "I don't have anywhere." Those 4 words pierced deeper than any story could, carrying within them all the loneliness, the pain, the despair of a life too young to carry such weight. And Claire felt her heart clench, knowing that walking away was no longer an option. She leaned forward, promising softly that she would not hurt her, that she only wanted to help, but the girl's eyes still flickered with doubt, as though years of rejection had taught her that promises were fragile things that broke too easily. The silence stretched again, thick and heavy, and Claire wondered how many others had walked past this girl without seeing her. How many had chosen not to look too closely, and in that thought came a rush of guilt for all the times she herself had turned her gaze away from pain when it did not fit into her world. She whispered that her name was Claire, introducing herself as if to plant a seed of trust, and after a long hesitation, the girl muttered a single word, in return, "Maya." The name hung in the cold air like a fragile spark, and Claire repeated it softly, smiling despite the tears she felt building in her eyes. She told Maya that she had a son about her age, that he too believed in Christmas miracles, and maybe tonight could be one for her as well, but Maya only hugged her knees tighter, torn between hope and fear, the silent struggle of deciding whether to believe in someone for the first time in a long time. Claire realized this was not going to be easy, but Maya's walls had been built high and strong to protect her fragile heart, and yet she felt a determination rise within her, stronger than any business deal, stronger than any ambition she had ever chased. She would not let this child vanish back into the shadows. The night pressed on, the snow falling thicker now, and Claire sat in that alley with the little girl, the cold seeping through her bones, but her spirit burning with an unfamiliar fire, the kind that whispered that life was not about money or success, but about moments like this, where choosing compassion could change everything. And though Maya said nothing more, though her eyes still carried storms, there was the faintest flicker of something new in her gaze when she looked at Claire. Something small, but undeniably a fragile thread of trust forming in the silence of that cold night. The night deepened as Claire guided Maya gently out of the alley, her small hand cold and tense in Claire's grasp, and though the girl walked with her, each step carried hesitation, as if she were prepared to bolt at the first sign of danger, and Claire knew she had to tread carefully, for trust was fragile and easily broken, yet she could not ignore the urgency of the situation, the bitter cold that threatened to steal away whatever strength the child had left. They reached Claire's sleek black car parked by the curb, its polished surface glistening with a thin layer of snow, and Maya stopped, her eyes wide, her body stiffening, as if the sight of such wealth was unfamiliar, or perhaps even frightening, and Claire quickly knelt to reassure her that this was only a way to get somewhere warm, not a trap. But Maya's silence lingered, her gaze darting between the streetlights and the passing cars before she finally climbed inside, curling up in the corner of the leather seat as though trying to disappear into its folds. The drive was quiet except for the hum of the engine, and Claire glanced at the girl in the rearview mirror, noticing how her eyes traced every detail around the glowing dashboard, the reflections on the glass, the steady rhythm of the windshield wipers as though committing them to memory. And Claire wondered what kind of life forced a child to study the world with such guarded suspicion. When they reached her large home, draped in lights and framed with holiday wreaths, Maya froze again, her lips parting slightly as if she could not comprehend such a place existed, and Claire felt a pang of shame at the extravagance that had once brought her pride, but now seemed like a cruel reminder of what Maya lacked. Inside, the warmth of the house wrapped around them, and Daniel came running down the stairs, his face lighting up when he saw his mother, but he stopped short at the sight of the girl, his excitement replaced by quiet curiosity, and Claire quickly explained that Maya was a friend who needed a safe place for the night. Daniel, innocent and kind, simply smiled and offered her a cookie from the plate he had been carrying. And though Maya hesitated, she accepted, nibbling slowly, her eyes flicking between mother and son as if testing their sincerity. That night, Claire gave Maya a blanket and let her rest in the guest room, but sleep did not come easily for either of them. For Claire lay awake wrestling with questions. Where had Maya come from? Who had failed her? And how could such a child be left to suffer in the cold? And as dawn broke, she decided she could no longer just wonder. She needed to know. The next morning, she gently asked Maya about her family, but the girl grew tense, her eyes filling with shadows, and she whispered that she had no one, that people she once trusted had left her behind. And when Claire pressed carefully, Maya shook her head violently, begging not to talk about it. Claire pulled back, understanding that forcing the truth could shatter the delicate thread between them. But later, while preparing breakfast, she noticed something odd, a small scar peeking from beneath Maya's sleeve, faint but deep, a mark that hinted at more than just neglect, and the sight made her stomach twist. Over the next few days, Maya began to soften slightly, speaking in short sentences, sharing fragments about how she had once lived in a house full of people but was told she was a burden. how she had learned to hide and survive on scraps, and how Christmas only reminded her of being unwanted. And Claire felt her heart ache with every word. But the real revelation came one evening when Daniel was showing Maya his toy box. And Claire overheard the girl whisper something strange, almost too soft to catch. "I used to live near here." Claire froze, her mind racing, and later that night, when Maya was asleep, she searched through local reports and community records, her eyes widening as she discovered a story about a girl who had gone missing months ago, presumed to have run away, but whose family lived just a few neighborhoods away. Claire's hands trembled as she read the details, realizing Maya's past was not one of complete abandonment but something far more complicated, perhaps even darker, and she faced a dilemma that twisted her heart. Should she confront Maya with this truth and risk losing her fragile trust, or should she contact the authorities and risk placing her back into the very life she had fled? The weight of the decision hung heavy, but what unsettled Claire most was not the report itself, but the tone of it. The way the story described Maya's disappearance without urgency, as if the family had not truly cared to find her, as if her absence had been an inconvenience rather than a tragedy. The more she read, the more the puzzle pieces shifted into place. The fear in Maya's eyes, the scars, the reluctance to talk, and Claire began to suspect that the home Maya had left was not a safe one, but a place of pain she could not yet describe. The hidden truth was beginning to surface, not through Maya's words, but through the silences, the scars, and the indifference of those who should have protected her. And Claire realized she was holding a story much larger than she had imagined. As she stood in the doorway that night, watching the girl sleep with Daniel's stuffed bear tucked under her arm, Claire knew this was not just about offering temporary shelter. It was about uncovering the truth, a truth that might demand more of her than she had ever given, and she whispered to herself that no matter how difficult, she would not let Maya be forgotten again. Claire's heart raced as the days passed, for every moment with Maya brought her closer to the truth, yet left her more uncertain about what to do. And though the girl had begun to smile faintly at Daniel's jokes, though she had started to eat without hesitation and even hum softly, when she thought no one was listening, there was still a wall around her, a silence that seemed to carry heavy memories. And Claire knew that one wrong move could cause it all to crumble, leaving the child lost again. One afternoon, while snow fell gently outside, Claire decided to take Maya and Daniel to a small Christmas fair in the town square, hoping the warmth of lights, laughter, and music would bring some joy to the girl. But as they walked through the crowd, she noticed Maya's hand gripping hers tightly, her eyes darting at every sound, as though she feared being seen or recognized. And Claire wondered if someone from the girl's past still lingered close by. They stopped near a small stall selling ornaments, and Daniel picked out a bright red one shaped like a heart, pressing it into Maya's hand, telling her that now she had a piece of their family too. And for the first time, Claire saw a tear slip down Maya's cheeks, though she quickly wiped them away, whispering a soft thank you that barely reached above the crowd's noise. That night, back at the house, as Daniel fell asleep quickly under the glow of twinkling lights, Claire sat with Maya by the fireplace, trying once more to reach deeper into the girl's hidden world, gently asking what had made her leave her old home. But Maya's eyes grew clouded, her small fingers trembling as she traced patterns on the blanket. And finally she whispered a few broken words that she had been told she was unwanted, that she was punished for mistakes that were not hers, and that she had run into the cold because even hunger felt safer than staying. Claire's chest tightened, anger and sorrow twisting inside her, but before she could respond, Maya shook her head firmly, warning that if anyone found out where she was, they would take her back, and she could not bear that again. Claire promised she would never allow harm to touch her, yet in her heart, the weight of the truth, the missing girl's report, the family who had not searched with love, pressed heavily, for she knew soon she would have to decide whether to remain silent, to keep Maya safe, or speak up and risk losing her trust forever. The following morning, Claire received a call from an old friend who worked in child services, reminding her about charity donations for Christmas. And Claire felt her breath catch as her eyes flicked to Maya, who was drawing quietly by the window, and she realized that time was closing in, that if anyone else recognized the girl first, the choice would be snatched from her. That day, while Maya and Daniel played in the snow, Claire stepped into her study and opened the missing child's report again, reading every word carefully, her stomach twisting as she saw how coldly the details were written, how little care was placed on the girl's return, as if her absence was simply noted down rather than mourned. And the anger in her grew until she clenched her fists, whispering that no child deserved to be cast aside like that. Yet as she closed the file, she heard laughter outside, Daniel's clear voice mixing with Maya's softer one, and for the first time it sounded like true joy. And Claire's resolve faltered, for how could she risk taking that away? That night, as she tucked Maya in, the girl clutched Daniel's toy bear again and asked in a shaky whisper, "Do you think families can change their hearts?" Claire froze, unsure how to answer, knowing Maya wanted hope but also fearing the truth, and so she simply stroked her hair and said, "Sometimes people don't, but sometimes others come into your life and become the family you were meant to have. And though Maya nodded softly, her eyes lingered with questions that cut deeper than words. Days rolled into one another, Christmas drawing near. The house filled with warmth, yet under it all the tension grew like a silent storm, and Claire found herself at a breaking point, torn between obeying the rules of society and obeying the pull of her own heart. For the test before her was not about law or reports, but about love, trust, and the fragile future of a child who had already endured too much. That night, as snow fell heavier than ever, Claire lay awake, staring at the ceiling, whispering to herself that tomorrow she must decide. And though her heart ached, she knew that whatever she chose would shape not only Maya's life, but her own forever. Christmas morning arrived with a quiet stillness, the world outside blanketed in fresh snow that shimmered under the pale light of dawn. And inside the house, Claire rose early, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision she had avoided for days. Yet the warmth of Daniel's excitement as he ran to the tree and the sight of Maya's wide eyes staring at the glowing lights made her pause, as if the universe was asking her to wait a little longer. But deep inside she knew time could not be held back forever. The children tore open gifts with laughter, Daniel proudly showing Maya how to play with his new toy car. And for a moment, Claire allowed herself to watch with quiet joy, feeling the rare peace of family togetherness. But then a soft knock at the door startled her, sending a rush of dread through her chest. And when she opened it, she found a man standing there, a stranger with sharp eyes, holding a folded flyer in his gloved hand, asking politely if she had seen a missing girl. And though he smiled faintly, Claire noticed the way his gaze shifted to the warmth inside, to Maya's silhouette by the tree, and she quickly shook her head, forcing calm into her voice as she said she had not, closing the door with trembling hands as her heart thundered in her chest. That night Claire could not sleep, haunted by the thought that people were still searching, that sooner or later someone would recognize Maya, and she wondered if she was being selfish by holding on so tightly. But when she peeked into the children's room and saw Maya curled up peacefully, Daniel's hand resting on hers as though guarding her even in sleep, Claire knew this was no selfish act. It was survival, it was love, and it was a new beginning. She could not surrender. The next day she drove with the children into the city, the streets alive with festive lights and carollers. And when they passed by a group of children receiving gifts from volunteers, Maya's expression shifted, her eyes distant, as though remembering something long ago, and she whispered softly that she had once wished for a Christmas where she felt wanted. And Claire's chest ached as she promised her that from now on, every Christmas would be hers too. And in that moment, she realized her decision had already been made. The past no longer had a claim on Maya because here she was, safe, loved, and part of something real. But fate was not finished testing them, for as they left the city, a car began to follow closely, its headlights bright in the mirror. And Claire's heart pounded as she turned into smaller streets, trying to lose it, while Daniel asked why. They were going a different way, and Maya's hands clutched the seat tightly, fear rising in her eyes, and Claire whispered that everything would be all right, though doubt gnawed at her. Finally, the car sped past them, disappearing into the night. But the scare left Claire shaken, knowing that shadows from the past could appear at any time, and she realized she had to prepare, not just for the fight to keep Maya safe, but for the journey of building trust strong enough to withstand it. That evening, when they returned home, Claire lit the fireplace and sat with both children, holding Maya's hand and gently telling her that sometimes the world tries to take away the things we love, but what matters most is standing together and never letting go. And Maya nodded slowly, her eyes bright with tears, whispering that she was not afraid anymore, because she finally believed she had a family who would never let her go. In the days that followed, the house transformed into something more than a shelter. It became a home filled with laughter, small arguments, bedtime stories, and warm meals shared at the table. And Maya's once guarded face softened as she learned to trust the rhythm of love, even joining Daniel in hanging new photos on the wall, pictures of 3 lives blending into one. One snowy evening, Claire sat at her desk and took out the missing child's report one last time, staring at it with a deep breath before tearing it into pieces and letting them fall into the fire, watching as the flames consumed every word of the past. And with that final act, she felt a strange freedom, as though she had not only given Maya a new beginning, but herself as well. For in saving the girl, she had saved a part of her own heart that had been hidden since her husband's death. Months passed, and spring arrived, the snow giving way to blossoms. And one morning, Claire watched from the porch as Daniel and Maya raced across the garden, their laughter echoing like music, and she whispered to herself that this was the life she had once feared she would never have again. But now it was here, alive and real. And though the world outside still carried its uncertainties, within those walls a promise had been made, that no matter what came, they would face it as a family. Because sometimes the greatest miracles are not in grand gestures or riches, but in the quiet courage of love that dares to begin again.